Hello, Mr. Gheorghiu.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. Yourself?
Well, trying to show you something interesting again.
Perfect, perfect. Looking forward. All right, so here you play against Marc Geenen.
Yeah, he was an international master from Holland and or from Belgium, I think. And we played this game in a very important tournament in Ostend. It was a traditional tournament. It was organized each year, and finally we'll have a very interesting game because we played a very sharp variation for white and for black. It's not clear even now. It's not clear who is better and why. You see, but it's very, very sharp. We'll see. And afterwards, many years later, we had also some very interesting games at the highest level, even in a very important match between Carlsen and Anand. We could meet this variation. Finally, Carlsen won a very important game, and it was in their match that was decisive. That therefore he could win the championship, you know. But it was very unclear.
To become the world champion.
Yeah, but first time, I mean.
And he was with white or
he was with white, but during the game probably he was lost in one moment. I mean, Anand with black could win in one moment, you know.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So it was very, very unbalanced game, you see, like this. And it was also more or less the same in our game. We'll see. Okay. So after d4, he took a6, and now c4. This is a very, very important moment. After c4, white tries to get immediately a very good position with a lot of space, you know. So now you have to react very well with black, because otherwise you'll have some problems later on, you know, positional problems.
So how do you react?
So knight f6, you try to attack immediately the center. You know?
Okay.
So, yes,
so
knight
put pressure
f6,
on the center.
Yes. Knight c3, and now bishop b4. Bishop b4 is very active. If you play d6, bishop e7, castle, and so white is simply better because he has a lot of more space, you know. So now white has to do something also, and e4, e5 is also very sharp, and we have our game. You see, we'll see why and how. So after knight e4, he played bishop. Queen g4. Queen g4, of course, is probably the best move, because if he could play here bishop d2, black is simply better afterwards, you know. After bishop d2, black could take in d2, queen takes d2, knight c6 or queen a5, you know, simply better for black, you know, a little bit. So after queen g4, knight takes c3, a3. And now after a3, bishop back to f8. This is the best move. You retrieve the bishop. Now white takes in c3, he recaptured the piece, and after d6, black has simply a better structure. And you know, if you look at this position, you know, the double pawn c, because of this, black is a little bit better always. But it's better in endgame or later on, you know. Until then, you have to play very carefully. Yes.
Yeah.
No. So, of course, he took in d6, and now everything is forced. e5, knight f5, of course, no? And now I played g6. He played here queen g3, of course. Now, if you take in f5, you are lost. After queen takes e5, you lose the rook, and it's clearly better for white, much better, no?
Yes.
So, of course, you don't do this. And now knight c6, of course. And after knight c6, he played knight h6. It's a little bit strange, but in that time, it was recommended by the Soviet analysis, you know. I mean, they analyzed this for white. It was played in the Russian championship, the Soviet championship, and everybody thought that white is okay. I mean, it's a very sharp game, and tactically, white has some threats, you know, so you have to react very well with black.
So basically,
a few moves.
Pressure on the king side.
Yes. The alternative, instead of knight h6, was simply to play knight e7. After knight e7, if you take with the knight in e7, queen takes e5, and white is clearly better. But after knight e7, queen takes d6, black is all right. Black has a good game, you know, it's no problem. So after knight h6, I took with the queen in d6, better than with the bishop, because if here, instead of queen takes d6, after bishop takes d6, c5,
Yes.
bishop takes c5, bishop c4. It was very, very unclear who is better, you know. White gave a pawn, but has a very strong initiative, you know. So queen d6 is much better. Okay, so now
Is defending the
yes, defending the pawn. Yes.
F7.
Again, it was very important to play queen e6 instead of bishop e6. Very big mistake, bishop e6, because after queen f6, again, black is lost probably. You know.
So here if
After bishop e6, queen f6 is okay. Black is probably lost already. You know. Yeah. So you have to be careful. You know, a few moves like this immediately after the opening. You know. But if you play well, black is all right. You know. So okay, queen e6 is very strong. Bishop g5, and now again simply bishop e7. So now he took. Probably was a little bit better to try to play h4. Very sharp again. Black has no problem, but it was an alternative, you know, probably a little bit better. So he took in e7, I took with the queen, and now h4. And after f5, he has a very unpleasant surprise. So we'll see now the result of this opening. The knight from h6 is very far, you know, and until the end of the game will stay there, and therefore white will lose the game without any problem. You see?
So he's out of game.
Yeah, completely. You know, yeah.
He was trapped.
It seemed dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, if you look the first glance like this, knight in h6 was all right, you know, threatening something. But as a result of you know, our moves from our game, we'll see now the knight from h6 is doing nothing. Black has a very strong initiative and completely better, I mean, completely winning position strategically, you know, because of this structure. The structure is very bad for white, you know, a3, c3, c4 is, you know, very bad structure, the pawn structure. Yeah. So now he tried g4, you know, to open the game. I mean, somehow, yeah. And after queen g7 again, what to do? You have to play g5 because otherwise you lose the knight, you see.
Yeah.
So, okay, g5, and now bishop e6 and castle. Okay. From now on, he's trying to do something tactically, you know, to free himself somehow, you know, but it's a little bit too late, you see. If black plays normally and well, black is clearly better and probably finally winning, you see. So queen e7, again, you have to be careful, you know. Bishop, king b2, of course. And now bishop d7. Again, a very good move, because otherwise, you know, if, for instance, here, it was the last moment where black could go wrong, you see. Instead of bishop d7,
yes,
black could play, you know, queen c5. It seems very good. After queen c5 comes the surprise, you know. Knight g4, and the knight comes into play. Because now if you take in g4, queen f6, and finally white escaped somehow, you see. Because the black king is bad.
You attack two pieces here.
And now it's dangerous for black, you see, already. And if probably he escapes somehow, you know, maybe he can make a draw finally, you know. Rook f8 takes in e6 with check, queen e7, and so on. I mean, black loses the advantage, you know. But of course, after bishop d7 is much better for black in our game. So now bishop d7. The problem now is that you have time to castle long side. And if you castle long side, the black king is safe, and later on you win in any endgame. But until the endgame, he loses otherwise, you know. So, okay. So bishop d7. The pawn from c5 is hanging, but it's not important. For the moment, you don't take the pawn. It's not important, you know. Important is to be safe and have a very, very well-organized initiative, you know. So, okay, castle, bishop c4. Finally, he could, you know, more or less, you know, develop the pieces, the last piece. But it's a little bit too late because the knight, as you can see, is still on h6, doing nothing, you see. Yeah. So, okay, now we agree to trade the bishop because the bishop from c4 is the good piece. So now he has to do something. Queen e2. I mean, at least he wants to come with the queen in, so, you know, into play. But after knight a5, he's forced to accept, you know, to take in e6. And now it's clear. Look, you know, It's like a Schweitzer, the white position. You see, and the white pawns are terrible.
Many holes.
Yeah, terrible. You know, the threats are queen b3 check, knight c4 check. You know, everything. Everything is hanging.
Yeah.
So, okay. In my opinion, the position is already lost for white here. See, but you have to play well. So knight c4 check. Bishop, king a1, the only move. Knight takes a3. Okay, we took a pawn. And the very bad position, you know, continues to be there. I mean, the pawn c5 and c3. So queen b2, knight b5. Now, again, if later on he has time to come somehow to play c4, after knight d4, again, the knight from d4 is terrible. I mean, a fantastic position.
Yeah, and this knight is so sad here.
Yeah, but the knight from a6 doesn't play. Yeah. Okay, rook e1, probably the only move. Queen b4, and now I played e4. So now it's Zugzwang finally. You know, you have to do something with white, but what?
Yeah.
There's no move.
Only to go wrong,
yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. So he tried f3, I mean, the last hope, but it's too late, of course. And now I took in d1, he took, and we took the pawn. Now, every endgame is lost, every middle game is lost, see? He could resign, of course. He tried again c6, time trouble, f2, he took in b7 with check, king takes, and he resigned, no?
He resigned here,
He
yes.
resigned, but look, it's hopeless, completely hopeless. Even if he has time to come into endgame, he loses every endgame because he's pawn down, he loses a pawn from c3 later on, the king comes immediately into play, but he can never arrive to play such an endgame, you know, because he loses before, I mean. Loses a piece, he loses a rook, you know, something like that. It was a catastrophe for white, you know, if you look at the game. But it was very interesting because he tried a Soviet analysis, you know. So sometimes even the Soviets could go wrong, you know, at the highest level like this, you know, the Soviet grandmasters. It happens. In Sicilian, you can always have such a
maybe it works until
a surprise, you know.
Yes,
yeah.
It works until a certain move.
Yeah, yeah. Of course. No, immediately after the opening, probably, he had to try to play knight e7 modestly, you know. Knight h6 was a little bit too optimistic like this, you know. He tried a little bit too much, but it was, I mean, theory. The theory said knight h6 is very good.
Go there.
So, okay, it happened. So.
Nice. Thank you, Mr. Gheorghiu.
You're welcome.